Greetings and salutations. This is Abe Abdelhadi with The Bitter Truth, where we may not have all the answers, but we ask an awful lot of questions. You can also become a bitter pill by visiting patreon.com/The Bitter Truth, where you can get some fabulous swag. Also, just in the last couple of weeks, started working with the Texas Free Press as a contributing editor, and I've already posted a couple of essays. They also stream The Bitter Truth on that website, so you can hear us on all the usual suspects, iTunes, Spotify, doodah, and TexasFreePress.com. And there's many flavors there, and you may not like them, but you can comment on them because that's America. Speaking of America, I've got a friend of the show, good guy, all around activist, been all over the world, done all kinds of shit that would just curl your hair, curl my hair if I had any. Adrian Boutureira, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, congratulations on the Texas Free Press gig. You hadn't told me about that. That sounds great, man.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's cool. I mean, we guests that I've had on the show a couple times reached out to me starting something new, and I thought, yeah, I'll try it for a little bit and see how it goes. And so far, the only pushback I've gotten is from the public, but the powers from within, they just let me write what I write, and whatever. I got a paper coming out on Palestine tomorrow, so awesome. that will push them. Then we'll see. We'll see how much they love me. We'll see how much they love me then. We'll see how all forms they really are. But they're good guys. They're good people. But hey, man. So Nevada went down with the caucus. I was kind of shocked that Bernie won by as much as he did. Not because I was shocked that he would win, but shocked that he didn't get cheated again. It seems like the new function on the iPad, which is basically an app, didn't do what it did in Iowa. So So what are your thoughts on that, man?
Well, clearly, we are seeing a huge shift, right? That has caught a lot of people by surprise. The numbers were not supposed to pan out like this. Cheating or not cheating, it wasn't a month ago that almost every single polling kind of political prediction place and all of these experts, were telling us, that they had Bernie on third. They basically had already, practically buried him before the thing had even started. And then all of a sudden, we started to experience this huge surge. Now, I'm not quite sure, what to attribute that to, other than, to the fact that maybe as things got closer, they knew they had tweaked the numbers or something to begin with, and things weren't changing. I have no idea what happened, but the truth of the matter is, here he is, front runner all of a sudden, and that is generating a whole new dynamic, I believe, both within the left and I believe within the powers that be.
Well, hang on one second. Like for example, though, I mean, you made a comment a second ago when they had all but had him at third before the caucus even got started. That's what they did 4 years ago with him and Hillary. They kept saying, it's already called for Hillary the day before the election. They were pulling all kinds of crap like that in addition to the superdelegates and purging voter rolls and doing all this weird chicanery. It was kind of like, I think, par for the course again in terms of their playbook, no?
Yeah. It's hard to tell, right? Because it was too broad, and having this many candidates running, as opposed to ultimately almost from the very beginning it was just him and Hillary,
right?
So it was easier for them to sort of tweak that, and we're just talking about percentage point. I mean, but I don't believe that it was that kind of a mass conspiracy or anything, but it does warrant doing a little bit of research because it is huge. It is a huge shift in expectations and predictions, which I haven't really had a chance to break it down and find its source, because I've been kind of enjoying the insanity that has ensued. It's fantastic, Abe, to see how little it takes, to dismantle the myth of invincibility of the enemy.
Well,
they are weak, man.
Well, but here's the thing.
So
but they did it to themselves. They did it to themselves. They had 23 people running initially to try to get into a contested convention. Deval Patrick, nobody gave a shit. He did an event at Morehouse College. You thought Hillary Clinton was bad with 100 people in a gym. He couldn't get anybody. at an all-black college to show up, and he was Barack Obama's roommate. One would think that has a little bit of, hey, it's Barack Obama's roommate from college, and he was a former governor. Maybe he's cool. No, nobody gave a fuck. They didn't show up, and so now you got 23. You have 23 people initially running to dilute the field to make sure that he would get to a contested convention, because as you know, the superdelegates get to vote on the second ballot, and without a plurality of the vote,
I mean, the last time on the first.
Right, the last time, but this time
they just changed the rules for 2020.
Right, they changed.
So when Hillary and Sanders.
Oh no,
ran,
I know. That's my point.
Yeah.
That's my point, though, is that this field now, this invincibility that you're talking about, it bites them in their own ass, because when you run 23 people and then it starts diluting the waters, and then you get in there, now you're down to 8 or 9. And now it gives people more of a choice, and especially when we see how flawed these 8 or 9 are. Right, we've had about a year now to look at Joe Biden, like shoot himself in the dick as many times as Trump does, but yet the mainstream media never covers that, right? And so what you're saying here, the to watch Sanders kind of surge and now kind of knock out this perception of invincibility. You got CIA Pete, who's basically the gay Obama, who says nothing, and basically he's the yuppie version of. The yuppie version, he's what Obama was. He just went with your couch and your Volvo and your autographed copy of Hillary's biography. He was nothing. And so now he's proving that. And then Liz Warren, I mean, she's who she is. And so, now you got Bernie surging in front. But anyway, that I just wanted to speak to that point, because there is no invincibility, I don't think, anymore, and they can't cheat like they did before. They can, but they're going to have riots. I mean, burning down fires like 1968 if they cheat Bernie again. No.
Oh man, you and I talked about this last time. I want to visualize that. Like in the same way that I was visualizing like Matthew's like little Central Park reference scene. You know what I mean? It's like in the back of my mind, I was like, sign me up for the Central Park party. I don't know if your listeners know, that was when Matthew's who is completely out of control on MSNBC, coming out and saying that if kind of alluding
that made
to
the
the
news.
fact that
Chris Matthews on Hardball, he lost his fucking mind. He lost his mind the other night. These guys are as bad as any quote unquote fake news. It's really pathological. It's pathological.
Oh man, but this is what I'm trying to say. Like, I mean, yes, look, man. Politics has always been dirty. The Clinton thing, against Sanders was just was nasty. But I personally have not ever seen it be this surreal to the point where they're no longer even trying to couch it on any legitimacy.
No.
In other words, I'm talking about they are going for the worst of the Howard Stern. In other words, CNN becomes like the political Howard Stern show. Well, Alex. I mean, Rachel Maddow is Alex Jones.
If anybody tells me about her Rhodes Scholarship one more time, I'm going to that was like 30 years ago, and she hasn't been on Air America in a long fucking time. Liz Warren meant something for 10 minutes when she did the CFPB. That was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
What has she done since? She finger wags at bankers at those hearings. You guys aren't super duper. You're just not super duper. Does she team up with a congressperson to go write a bill to put these fuckers in jail? In Vietnam, if you are busted speculating like what happened in 2008, you know what? They hang you in Vietnam. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
They hang you there.
Well, yes,
they hang you there. They Mussolini your ass. They strap you up by your boot heels and beat you like a piñata. Okay, we need to do that here.
Sure.
Instead of going.
No, even Iceland put all their speculating bankers
in jail.
In the slammer. They didn't throw him in those hot springs or anything.
No,
because they're civilized.
Right. But the minimum sentence in that shit was 5 years in Iceland. The minimum sentence was 5 years. Some of those guys got 20 years. Right?
Yeah. I mean, it goes without saying. I mean, the only thing that, it's so, look, man, to sort of get back to what we were saying. Now, I mean, I wanted to say something, pertaining to the kind of, fabricated sense of invisibility, which, people need to really, this is, critical because, in other words, the Democrats even though the whole impeachment thing was a complete fabrication, they proved completely incapable of bringing Trump and his machinations to order. Legalistically speaking, they were unable to do anything. They were unable to do anything about Barr. In other words, the institutions of the capitalist state, of America, are completely discredited. In other words, the point is like, if Trump fails to, and I don't want to go off topic too much, but the idea being that at this point in time, the reality is that if this guy refuses to hand over power, it's like he may, who's gonna say no? How is this system that cannot even get from point A to point B in the most blatant cases of violation of process, from whatever angle you want to look at it, so basically it's like, I'm not handing over power, and I got the military with me, and then so basically like the mask is coming down and the mask is coming off. And I believe that there are a lot of warning, signals here all around, which warrant attention. But most importantly is the mask of, in some ways, I think, okay, for one thing, Bernie, I don't even remember Bernie being socialistic or a socialist, having taken that much of a front and center, issue thing, in the election as he has now. In other words,
wait, what are you talking about? You mean in 2016 or any of his elections? He's always kind of run on the fact that he was a democratic socialist. That's never, even when he would visit Nicaragua as mayor of Burlington, he would.
No. He's been a socialist, an independent socialist, whatever he's called himself. When you look at his roster at the Congress, that's what it says that he is.
Right. Right.
What I'm trying to say is that he wasn't front and center as a target issue that I can remember as much as it is now for the media and for for the establishment Democrats or whatever. This year, I believe that the Red Scare thing has gone through the roof. They are really trying to use that, and that is the point which I believe carries with it a relative amount of positivity for the real left in this country, right. And that's where a lot of the arguments are taking place right now.
Right.
Because people are resenting the fact that Sanders is misrepresenting socialism.
His issues go far beyond that. We can get in that here in a second, but I think what the Democrats are trying to do, and it's not. I don't think it's working. Because last summer, 70% of Fox News watchers, 70% of them were cool with Medicare for all, because they're starting to understand that they're not getting the biggest bang for their taxpayer dollar compared to other countries. And when people say shit like, "Oh, it's going to make your taxes go up," okay, the 1% or 1/10 of 1% that it goes up for the average middle class person, they're not paying thousands of dollars a year in premiums, whether through their job or on their own. We have, all the ACA did was force a public to buy a flawed and predatory product from an unregulated monopoly. That's it. And so when you have 500,000 bankruptcies going down because of medical bills, and they all had insurance, people are starting to wake up. So it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. And people are also starting to figure out that the cosmetic differences, guns, gays, and abortion, are the only things between these two parties. It's one big money party. Yeah. Except for the NRA, they take money from the same place. So, and they have the same goal. When you give a standing ovation to Juan Guaido and your AOC or your Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and you're giving a standing ovation to Juan Guaido and not pushing back on the president whatsoever when he says this guy's the undisputed, whatever he said, president of Venezuela. No, he's not. No, he's not. He lost an election. Like you and me are the undisputed presidents and vice presidents of fucking Texas, and we're hanging out at the little Longhorn Chicken Shack. We're going to get ordained by the priest of Guatemala or where the fuck's going to ordain us. It's just the kind of crazy shit that keeps going. So it's like, he's not really.
Well, which candidate was it? Speaking of the health insurance, I think that clearly, we got to try to stay focused a little bit.
Yeah.
But the whole idea somebody, in the last debate in Las Vegas, was like, well, Bernie wants to take away people's, ability to stay with the insurance that they love. And I started to say, Bernie, now, man,
jump in. And this is what
American have you been talking to who loves their insurance company?
Right.
There is not. Look, man,
there's not one, dude. And the ones
that I know,
and the ones that give me the shit about choice never use their insurance. They get a physical. Doctor puts their finger up their ass during prostate exam time, and they're like, oh yeah, okay, paid for it, great. That's it. I don't know anyone that's had to use their insurance in a real way that likes it.
No. Of course not. I mean, if you basically, it's a welfare scam, and I think that Bernie spent way too much time, with the pharmaceuticals and not really addressing, the complete dysfunction of Obamacare, which would definitely earn them a shitload of brownie points to be able to explain be able to. But raise the ears. Wait, because the problem, man, along many other things, and we can go into it. The problem is that even as he's getting this huge momentum and opportunity, he's missing to sort of help the people connect the dots and expand on his base. By not managing to break away from what I believe has become a rather repetitive, like 3 or 4 point mantra that basically dumbs things down to the point where he's not even venturing out to be able to connect the dots with the disenfranchised independent voters. So you're talking about health care. You need to go after Obamacare, and you need to go after Obamacare in the context of your anti-corporate analysis, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? You need to be able to, and then you get the right-wing people who have been brainwashed by the right wing that Obamacare is the work of the devil, and now here's a guy that everybody's telling you he's your enemy because he's a commie, saying like Obamacare was a betrayal of the American people. Fucking say it, dude.
So okay, but you're doing something that a lot of people do with Bernie, and this is where I look at him as a leftist Rorschach test at this point, because what you're doing is what he should be doing, and I keep hearing this from not just you. I mean, God damn it, Jimmy Dore, everybody that I like will go on about what he should say about Israel, what he should say about Venezuela, and then he doesn't, and then he apes the CIA talking points about election reform in Bolivia, and I'm like, wow, I thought the guy won. Could have swore he fucking won. But he was there for 14 years. Well, God damn it, Angela Merkel has been in Germany for 15 years. Let's have a coup in Germany then. Right, but we won't do it because they're white, and so this is. Yeah,
but some shit can overlook. If you're an opportunistic politician, some shit can almost be justified. There's a difference between starting to talk foreign policy to like Americans when you're trying to get to the core of let's say the disenfranchised white working class. You're not going to bring millions of disenfranchised working class by basically explaining to them the injustices against morality.
No, but you do if you look like you're fighting. But you do. But you do.
So he can convince me. He can convince me as an opportunist, nationalist, social democrat, not even like a democratic socialist, at the service of empire, trying to get elected. Right. He can convince me that foreign policy, the American people are not ready yet to basically call Israel a murderous, apartheid, genocidal.
But hang on, you bring those people with you when it looks like you're fighting. And if you're fighting against, for example, the Russian talking points, he was just briefed that the Russians are trying to, infiltrate his election or his campaign. It's like, dude, talk back to that. Don't sit there and go, well, Mr. Putin, I got a message for you. Fuck that shit. That's what I'm talking about. If he's not going to fight for himself, is he going to fight for me? That's the kind of thing I'm talking. He doesn't fight for himself. He lays down and sucks massive pecker off of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. I'm going to believe he's fighting for me? This is my challenge here. I'm not trying to be a contrarian.
No. Yeah, I mean, it's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, but we still have a situation here that, in some ways, all of this conversation is, in my opinion, for me, taking place within the context that, as of right now, Bernie's search, which is basically, manifesting itself in a complete sort of, shifting of the paradigm as they had painted it for us.
Right.
People saying, well, it's funny because people say, it's like, well, he doesn't have the votes, and then I look at what they're citing and I'm like, you realize that you just sent me some data that goes back like 4 or 5 months when they had Sanders running fifth, right? So that we don't really know anymore. And I mean, he's running in some estimates as high as arriving at the convention with 1,800 delegates, while Warren has about 250, which means that if Warren drops out and half of those delegates decide to go with Bernie, then like he can nail it. It's over.
It's over. And then he's gonna commit suicide, which will be a horrible thing. It'd be terrible. And that's.
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, look, I mean, the thing is this. People seem to be obsessed with unmasking the realities of Bernie, the charade. I am not as concerned about that. I'm looking at it from two perspectives.
You should be.
Number one.
I'll let you finish right now, but let me just interject here. We should be, because in 2008 we were charaded by Obama, and I had that little feeling when he took the private money. And I voted for him anyway because Sarah Palin was on the ticket with McCain, and I can't have a Palin vice presidency when the guy's 2 days away from dying. Of course, he lasted 8 more years, but whatever. My point is that the unmasking bit. I think it's because we got tricked with Obama. I didn't vote for him in 12. I gave him the one vote in 08. But then he ended up not keeping a single promise after 8 years, not including but not limited to getting us into 7 fucking wars that no one seems to know that we're in. But continue. The one or two things. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're totally fine. I'm just, I just think that people need to have a pragmatic, approach and put on their organizing caps for just a minute, as opposed to the sort of, demagoguery or even, yes, look, he's not a socialist. He's not a revolutionary socialist. The Democratic Party is not reformable. The Democratic Party is never going to be a vehicle of real transformation. But he is introducing, through his rhetoric, through his, policy positions, he has managed to push the narrative, the political narrative in this country, 20 years, forward. And we in the left, and I consider myself part of the left, and I consider myself even part of the revolutionary left, need to be, honest about our sort of failure to have managed to be able to bring this reality to bear ourselves. So now we need to think strategically. We need to think creatively. Criticizing the shit out of the only guy right now, out of the whole bunch of clowns of them, even when you take into consideration the unmasking, the great unveiling of Bernie Sanders' charade, and you are done with that. Even after that, he remains the one guy who, if elected, may be able to manage to keep my aunt, from being on the streets after this motherfucker who's in power now just finished taking her $90 worth of food stamps and threatening her Medicare, Medicaid.
Well, I understand that.
And that's
I
just
understand.
one person, man. That's just one person. There are millions of people in this country whose lives will be really affected where one of those corporate Democrats be elected and be worse than Sanders. So the lesser of two evils thing, it's always been something that has been problematic for me. But in this case, and I'm sure this is what people have said before, in this case, under the circumstances in which we find ourselves at this historical junction, including the climate crisis, there is no leftist alternative. If there was a viable leftist alternative, if we had done our fucking work, if all of these people who talk and talk and talk about how this is yes, we know it's a fucking betrayal, but the narrative is getting pushed forward. Our narrative is being pushed forward. And now you have millions of Americans who I never believed in my whole lifetime, man. I've been here for 50 years. I have never seen so many people in this country, even when they're being misled about what socialism is, be able to say, okay, yeah, I can do it. 67% of Democratic voters said, we'll vote for a socialist fucking candidate.
Well, because they've seen.
They're not going to vote for a socialist candidate. No. We don't have a socialist.
We don't
candidate.
have. But here's the thing. They see that because they have seen the failure of a privatized banking system, a privatized healthcare system. College was free when I went to state school. It is now privatized. The privatized prison system. So when I hear these Ayn Rand fuckers say things like, "Well, we need a free market," we don't have a free market. We don't even have capitalism. People don't even understand. We're not even a capitalist nation. We haven't been for a long fucking time. Back in the day, capitalism was you start a business. If you fail, you went bankrupt. Remember Compaq Computers? Remember those guys? Big company. Bye-bye. You failed. Bye-bye. No bailout for you. Bye-bye. Right? That's what we used to do. Now, we let these people suck the marrow out of the treasury, and people are seeing that. People are seeing that in the fourth quarter of last year. We gave the banks $500 billion with $128 billion in one fucking night. That's why they're going for what you were saying. This is my challenge.
Yeah.
This is my challenge with Sanders. Okay, this is my challenge with Sanders. I mean, I've been watching even more closely since 2016. This is my challenge with him. And I get what you were saying. And I get the quasi-revolution, at least pushing the narrative forward. I understand your aunt. I got a mom on Medicare. I get it. I don't want her prescriptions getting jacked through the roof. I mean, but to your point, though, nobody gave a fuck when Obama kicked 850,000 people off of food stamps. When Trump does it with 700,000 people, oh my God, the world is ending. They just notice. When Sanders gets in without a mandate, this is my biggest point with this. He comes in without a mandate. How much is he going to get through his own Congress? Let's just say there's a sweep and there's a blue wave, like a bunch of Deval Patricks or whoever running through Pete Buttigieg in the House and the Senate. Let's just say he gets the blue wave. What kind of a mandate is he walking in with? Is it going to be an ironclad mandate where he's going to be able to push Medicare for all and forgive student debt, which is exactly about the same price as Trump's tax cut to the wealthy? Is he going to walk in with that? And without that, and we're going to have an economic crash in the next 1 to 2 years. I got buddies in finance I talk to all the time. Whether it's Sanders, whether it's Trump, we're going to have an economic crash like 2008, probably worse, within 1 to 2 years, 3 years. And if Sanders is president, that will be the end of socialism in this country for another 100 years. It'll be Eugene Debs without the prison sentence, or maybe with the prison sentence, given the way shit's been going. But this is where I get.
Okay, but hey, let's address that. I understand, but let's break that down just a little bit more. If he gets, locked out of process, if they block everything that he does, I think, we have to take into consideration a couple of things. Number one, if he were to get elected, the only way I can see this happening is with him arriving, at the nomination, with a first round victory. Okay, right. That alone is like a huge amount of people, and there is no way that like his policies can be deemed as like wishy-washy. In other words, he's like, the thing that's pissing me off alone becomes evidence of what he is drilling into people's heads. Okay. And so people are listening to him and they're thinking universal health care, they're thinking debt forgiveness, they're thinking, all of these things that he's not going to be able to pass, with a corporate dominated Congress of a bunch of, corporate pawns, but in both parties. Now, we have to understand this thing from both, now he will be able to have the veto power. So he will at least be able to block them from destroying anything. So people will get a little bit of a 4-year lifeline. And there is a possibility, and this is another thing that I'm finding problematic with Sanders, especially like listening to his recent speeches. He's not preparing his base for the kind of political resistance that you are referring to when you keep referencing like Chicago 1968. And I'm not talking about even like, I'm talking about psychologically, him as the leader of this so-called movement is not providing the kind of leadership that can be preparing people to say. And by the way, you guys need to understand that like both Democrats and Republicans alike are not going to just let me walk in there and waltz through and suddenly declare war. He kind of mentioned it a little bit in the speech in Austin, but not to the point where he's telling people, you need to be prepared to fight for what you are electing. You need to be prepared to hit the streets when the moment comes, to defend democracy, to defend the right for the president that you elected to pass the legislation that you elected him to pass. And now he's not saying those things because he's trying to sort of appeal, he's trying to not be the radical, crazy Bernie that Trump has labeled him there, or the radical threat to unity that all of the Democrats.
He made a video with Bloomberg and fucking Tom Perez, and they signed loyalty oaths about a year and a half ago that they wouldn't talk nasty about each other in case it's used against anybody in the general. I mean, they're doing all this patty cake bullshit.
Well, but they broke that pledge. I mean, I don't know what the fuck that was about. Obviously that was broken just the other day. They went after each other, man. So, but all I'm saying is this. Like we have to figure out. My concern are two things. Number one, it goes without us saying, I am not supporting Bernie per se. I cannot support somebody with whom I have fundamental differences, in terms of how he views global relationships, and based on what I've been able to gather from his past, and as well as recently, for instance, he's answering to the New York Times foreign policy questionnaire, where he actually on several questions fell to the right of Warren, no less. I know now I am with the working class people of this country, and the working class people of this country have been left without any other option than Bernie Sanders as their most viable way to protect their own interests. And I agree with them. There is no other. I mean, as fucked up as it is, Abe, as deceptive as it is, as much as we can critique it, there is no one who can assume power that will at least fight, for the rights of the American working class at the level in which I believe Bernie would try to implement some of these things. Now, he will be incapacitated in that process. And that's the question, and that is the process that, like, real socialists in this country, real leftists in this country, need to start preparing for, because that kind of disenfranchisement cannot be allowed to go to waste.
Right.
But the problem is, man, that other than getting on Facebook, other than writing in these fucking journals, deconstructions, man, of an analytical revolutionary deconstructions, worthy of a Nobel Prize. But nobody has managed since Debs to organize a party in this country, to organize even a socialist movement in this country that is grounded in the social fiber of the working class, that is led by the working class. So we arrive election after election full of ammunition to deconstruct what needs to be deconstructed, because I'm not saying that it doesn't, but we do not have an alternative. And somebody wants to tell me, well, there are alternatives. If they want to vote socialist, they should vote for a socialist candidate. What socialist candidate? Where are these socialist candidates? Where is the Green Party? Okay, because you can't just show up every 4 years, Abe, on election year, not having done any fucking work amongst the masses, not having built your trust among the masses because you don't have the capacity, or because you're too busy in your circular firing squad, okay? Fighting for power, which you don't even have, right? Which regretfully is what a lot of people are doing inside the Green Party.
Real quick interjection for people who don't for people who don't know who we're speaking to. Adrian Boutureira is not just talking out of his ass. He's been dialed in with the Green Party, or was dialed in with the Green Party significantly for years. And if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have gotten Howie Hawkins on the show, who's a current Green Party presidential candidate. So just so you know,
don't get me wrong.
No, you're not just. I'm making the point. I'm making the point that you're not just.
No. I know, but don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to this. Look, I have some of my. I have huge. There are people inside the Green Party that are fantastic and people. You know what I mean? And that are trying real hard.
Yeah, I know.
No. But I mean, I'm talking about in terms of like the critique that I'm making. They fall on my side of the argument. It's just that they're trying. These are people who not that long ago, 2 years ago, when I began to see what I felt was like the reality that the Green Party was as reformable as the Democratic Party,
right?
And I made some invitations to people to say, look, maybe it's time for us to start gathering the forces that we have, which are significant, given the fact that we are organized nationally, and let's go ahead and launch a new People's Revolutionary Eco-Socialist Party, and let's start building the movement from the bottom up in a new model.
But this is the challenge with human nature. Everything you're speaking to is even a bigger picture than that. It's a challenge with human nature. Right? It's like you're in the PLO. You don't like the way Yasser Arafat's doing it, right? So you go start the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, right? Do they do a better job? They do a lot of better things, but now you fractured, the PLO, which that's a whole nother hour. But I'm using that as an analogy, right? I used to teach high school in Glendale in the early 90s. And there was an Armenian gang that got started in Glendale. A bunch of Armenian kids. The reason they got started was because they were tired of, black and Mexican gangs beating up on them. So they started one Armenian gang, right? Well, within not too short of order, the one guy said, I think I could do a better job. Breaks off into another. Now there's 9 Armenian gangs in Glendale, and they all work for the Russian mob, okay? So it's just like, it's like this is kind of my point.
No. Listen, but beyond, Dave, yes, you're right. But beyond that, there are historical opportunities and there are historical processes that need to be recognized.
Right.
And there are realities that need to be recognized. And the least that we can be doing with maybe like the Left Forum coming up. For those who don't know what the Left Forum is, every year socialists around the country from every stripe gather somewhere. The last time, I don't remember. The last one I went was about 3 years ago in New York. Everybody's there. Everybody who's anybody in the radical revolutionary community shows up. They have their book fairs. They have, I would say, like in 3 days, maybe like 400, 500 workshops, right?
Wow.
The last time they had one, knowing what was coming, there was no real theme. For instance, it's like, how is the left going to work together to stop another term from this fascist?
Right.
Nothing. It was just more about like, socialism international, socialism nationally. What did Trotsky have to say with reference to Kropotkin's? Listen, shut the fuck up. We got work to do here.
Right.
We have real work to do. We have a responsibility. So now I am just hoping, look, I would hate to see this opportunity pass up. In other words, I am inspired, not by Bernie Sanders, man. I am inspired and surprised at the resilience of the American people. And yes, my friend, but they're being duped, Adrian. That Bernie's duping them. That what they think. I said, you don't understand. I don't know whether I've lived in another country. I don't know whether I've been living in another planet. I can just tell you to your face that I have never seen in my whole entire life this amount of Americans be willing to embrace the policies that this guy is selling them. And
when you beat somebody, listen, people are Christians, and this is from personal experience, people are Christians until you've suffered enough shit to understand, I'm on my own. There is no plan. All right? So whatever Republican, Democrat God you pray to, and you want to sit there and swear up and down that we're capitalists because you think one day you'll be Jeff Bezos, you wake up, as they say in Fight Club, you thought you were going to be movie gods and rock stars, you wake up one day and find out that you're not, and they're very pissed off about it. That's what's happening. Right. And they're understanding that for the money that we're letting these motherfuckers suck out of the treasury, every industry in this country sucks at the teat of treasury. That is what people are saying.
But the fact that it's happening is historical.
Right.
So we have to understand it from a dialectic, materialist, scientific, historical process.
Mm-hmm.
This is what in Latin American political analysis is called a process of coyuntura, which is a conjuncture, which is when a set amount of economic, social, and political circumstances reach an apex that lend themselves to this type of social political transformation. Mm-hmm. And we need to understand, everybody in this country who's a leftist needs to be working it from that angle, because there are two things. If Bernie Sanders, for whatever miraculous reason, manages to accomplish two things. Number one, to gain the nomination, which would be in and of itself a significant victory for the American people and the American working class within the context of the critique we've already created. Mm-hmm. That would be a victory. And then winning the White House, which, would require a lot more work. And, we could go into that for a whole different program. Now, the thing is that were he to arrive at the White House and were he to find all of his, policy commitments and policy promises obstructed, or he would start, conceding and cutting deals and, basically saying, okay, well, I can get, like health care for all, but, I'll send you guys like a monthly check for like an extra $50 so that you can pay for better insurance. If he starts to do crazy shit like that, which, a lot of people say that's exactly what he's going to do, then we have this huge betrayed disenfranchised class, working class, and even middle class people of all races, of all walks of life, just waiting there for us to take advantage of that betrayal. And I hate to sound opportunistic, but that's basically...
Well, no, it's not opportunistic. Okay, let's back up on the word opportunistic. It's not like you're out to make $10 million. It's opportunistic in that you're trying to seize the moment to further the cause for the working class, which is like 95% of us. Even if you make a couple of $100,000 a year in this country, in San Francisco, if you're making 117 with a family of 4, according to the Huffington Post about a year ago, you qualify for food stamps. Yep. So cities are getting more and more. I was talking to a guy this morning.
Wow!
I swear to God, about January of last year. Nice little report. $117,000, family of 4, which in Austin would get along okay. You qualify for food stamps in San Francisco. I was talking to a guy at breakfast this morning at an event, and he has a sister that lives in Bozeman, Montana. Let me just say that again, Bozeman, Montana. She bought a fixer-upper for $500,000 in Bozeman, Montana. So it's like it's happening all over, and unless we start creating, we're going to end up like the Weimar Republic. Unless we start correcting, there's no reason why Jamie Dimon, an employee, by the way, not an when people go, oh, I'm a capitalist. Jamie Dimon's not a business owner. He's not a business owner. Say that again. He's not a business owner. He's an employee making $50 million a year, and for fucking goddamn what? He's an employee.
Right.
To crash the
no, man.
Right? So when
it's obscene. It's Bernie's nailing it, and he's appealing to people's kind of conscience. But that, go ahead.
But the only point I was going to make in all of this is that for him to come in with a mandate, like you said, and if he doesn't if he does some crazy $50 a month program to pay for your $1,000 a month health insurance, there will be shit in the streets going down for sure. And I
don't know about that, Babe. I mean, I cannot look, man.
I don't think so.
I lived in Washington D.C. I've been in the middle of all this shit. I traveled.
Before.
I was here for the WTO. I was in Seattle.
Yes.
Let me tell you something. Those things, there is a certain amount of spontaneity that drives those things, and then there is a hell of a lot of radical revolutionary organizing that leads to those things being effective. We mobilized 1 million people. Hey, let me give you an example. During the first or the second Iraq war, under the banner of Answer in Washington, D.C., we mobilized more people against the Iraq war in one day. I think there was like 1 million people. It was, I believe till this day, it may have been the biggest march in history in Washington, D.C. Okay. Everybody shows up. Right. Everybody gets on stage. They give their speech. People yell. People scream. Okay. There was no real challenge. There was no occupation of the steps of the White House, forcing the National Guard to come and get you out of there with a gun. You have 1 million people. You get 50,000 people to go to the Supreme Court and create a human cordon demanding a direct dialogue like they do in South America, like they do in Europe. Yep. No. There is no history in this country anymore. The pacifists and the nonviolent fucking movement, which I believe, must have been paid by the State Department and by the CIA because, they have handcuffed the ability for the American people to truly resist. Okay, well, demonstrations are bullshit, man.
Well, here's the thing, and I agree with you 100% because I had Lee Camp on the show a couple of weeks back, and he made a great point. If you got a 2-hour permit to hold a sign, you're having a parade, not a protest. The real protest. The real protest.
He said what I was trying to say eloquently in one sentence.
Yeah.
Takes my verbose ass to say, in a fucking ruining your 20 minutes of your program.
Oh shit! Well, listen. This is why I don't get paid the big bucks either. So don't feel bad.
All right, there we go. Lowered expectations.
Yeah. Look, I'm Stuart Smalley, and God damn it, people like me.
Yeah.
But this to speak to your point though, the real protests in this country. Occupy, Dapple. Those are the guys that get their heads cracked. And I've been telling my friends this for a while now. I don't know when what I'm saying is going to happen. America is a bigger pot than most places. It's bigger than Venezuela. It's bigger than Bolivia. It's bigger than it's bigger than in some respects than Brazil, not by population but by concentration of population. So I'm not saying I know when it's going to happen, but you know what? Nobody knew when Archduke Ferdinand was going to get his head blown off and start World War I. It just that's the kind of shit that I'm talking about. And we got a powder keg here. And I'm 56 years old. There was 3 Watts riots in a row when I was little. I only remember 68 because I was 5 years old, going on 5 years old, and we lived a couple of blocks from the Watts train tracks, and so I could see the fires. That was my cognizant of like, oh shit, it's on TV, and I go on my sidewalk and I see the smoke. Oh my God, it's on TV. I kept doing that. I did this like my mom said I did this for a half an hour. Like I was watching the Watch riots on TV, and then I walked outside and stood on the sidewalk. I'm like, is that the fires? And my mom's like, yeah. I'm like, wow, I'm like, and I would watch it on TV. So it kind of hit me.
Yeah, I don't want to underestimate. Look, I don't want to underestimate the potential of that kind of spontaneity. But I want to assume, perhaps for the sake of pragmatism, that like those things often don't materialize themselves successfully unless there is like, a mass movement driving them and there is like some kind of cohesive, unified strategic action. I mean, that's how most successful actions on the streets of Europe, like they're happening, for instance, in Catalonia,
or France.
When you get like 1 million people, out on the streets because like the central Spanish government is trying to get rid of the independentist movement, government in Catalonia, and they say, no, you're not, and even the police, the local police force are now on trial because they themselves. So that didn't happen spontaneous. All of that shit was building up since the day that Franco died, right? So there is a historical. But one thing that I forgot to say. So the scenario of complete failure, it's a window of opportunity. The scenario of success, if Bernie were to succeed, because enough pressure is put on the corrupt politicians, and then all of a sudden, the midterm elections are coming up, and the social democratic or the democratic socialists of America begin to run candidates all over this country, encouraged by the Bernie victory with, some extra funding now to make things happen. And then all of a sudden you have this mediocre corporate Democrats, about to lose their cozy gigs, right? Because these are cozy gigs, man. And they're like, holy shit, okay, well. Okay, listen, I believe that I've been wrong about this. And so, come midterm, if we were to succeed, then the socialist left even has the ability to build on that, to be able to say, you see, it can happen. And now that we're here, we need to move to the next level. Now we need to start passing legislation where, like corrupt bankers will do life. Okay, so let's go ahead and get Bernie to put that on the table, and let's see how these guys react. Let's go ahead and start pushing on the foreign policy thing, and let's see. Now that you understand that like what you have and what you are getting now, part of it is coming from the sweat, blood, and tears of people in the global South. Do you understand that? Do you understand that the kind of love and solidarity that you have for yourself, in other parts of history, has been called National Socialism. In other words, like socialism, people, I posted this. People don't understand, because it's being turned into a black and white cartoon, that Hitler came to power under rather socialistic policies. You know what I mean? Which were basically like free Medicare, free healthcare, free education.
But hang on,
but that was all grounded.
But that was already established under the Weimar Republic, and gay rights and women's rights were already established in the Weimar Republic, which the Nazis and the Lutherans and the Catholics weren't crazy about.
Mm-hmm. No, of course, but you have to. The whole idea being that I call Bernie Sanders a national social democrat, not even socialist democrat, but a national social democrat, which is what? Which is a social democrat.
It's a Nazi, by the way.
in the model, a national social democrat is a social democrat model after the Scandinavian model on imperialistic steroids. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no.
So think about that for a second.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's really good.
Because the American people can and will. Based on what is happening now, the left has the opportunity no matter what. If Bernie succeeds, we can ride that wave and push it to the next level. If Bernie doesn't succeed, we need to sort of like coalesce all of those disenfranchised people and bring them into a bona fide, viable socialist movement that will eventually become an electoral possibility in 4 to 8 years. And that's the other thing. This is the whole thing. Things take work. You cannot build a socialist movement from Facebook rhetoric.
Well, this
or
is
you
a challenge.
cannot build a socialist movement from shaming other people.
Right.
Because in your laziness, in your ineptitude, in your impotency, or in your own privilege, perhaps. Okay? Because when I hear people say that it doesn't matter whether like Trump or Bernie Sanders run the government, I'm thinking to myself, this motherfucker must have some money stashed somewhere. This guy or this woman, they're not living day to day, because they wouldn't be saying that.
And they also don't have
person I know.
Yeah. Well, they also don't have.
I mean, it's a reality, man.
They don't have kids in the army either, right? So like,
no,
they don't. I mean, people that tell me shit like they act like I'm they'll blink at me like I'm doing card tricks in front of a dog when I say, we're still in fucking 7 wars. Trump promised to get us out of those. Obama left those, and they'll go, what? What do you mean? What war? Like adults.
Well, I'm not sure Sanders is going to get us out of those wars.
See,
that's where.
Yeah, but he talks about that, but yet he's voted for those wars. This is the challenge I'm having with him. See, Obama was only in Senate 2 years, and he was a tepid corporatist who didn't really rock the boat in the Senate. But he ran identity politics. In fact, in 2010, he won a Clio Award from Ad Age magazine, beating out Zappos and Apple Computers for Best Marketer of the Year in 2008, right? So it's like, because of hope and change, identity politics, United Colors of Benetton bullshit that Pete Buttigieg is trying to run. This is my challenge with Sanders, and you're right. I'd rather have a, quote, President Sanders than a President Trump.
President Biden. Or even like a...
No. No.
Like
President Biden will be the same fucking shit and worse because Democrats will go to sleep like they did under Obama. President Biden has the same ethics that a President Trump has. He will cut welfare.
No, that's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, all of them do. And Warren a little bit less. And the fact is that Warren actually, is, I believe, like, she's eloquent. She has turned to she's all over the place because she's just kind of desperate to try to figure out where,
She flip-flops on everything.
Oh yes, of course, man. So that cannot, So we are. It should be clear to everybody who has working class family, who has elderly parents, people who are poor and working class. Not only people who pay lip service to the poor and the working class. People who are really poor and working class don't have a choice right now but to vote and hope and keep their fingers crossed that the Sanders miracle will happen. We, on the other hand, can understand that reality from a working person's perspective, but at the same time, we are very aware of the limitations. We are very aware that there is, if the miracle for Sanders were to happen, he would not necessarily be able to deliver on at least 99% of what he's promising, because we know how the system works. Capitalism is not going to roll over and let some old Jewish commie guy or wannabe commie come in there and turn empire upside down, you know what I mean, and take their wealth and take their privilege, and start taxing people like Roosevelt did at like 75% over $1 million incomes or whatever, which he's not even talking about. That's the other thing. Everybody fucking acting like for years in this country, if you made a lot of money, you got taxed a lot. Nobody blinked an eye. That's how, they were able to build this country's, middle class. That's how they were able to fund all those fucking wars.
The marginal tax rate under Eisenhower, the marginal tax rate under Eisenhower was 90%. Right, and people think Eisenhower.
Hey, you realize that we're like at 420 now, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But to speak to your point, though, this is the thing. When people ask me this question, it drives me. When people say, "Well, then jobs will just leave." Well, up until Kennedy, they couldn't leave. Because up until Kennedy, you couldn't manufacture shit overseas and sell it in America. Now, if you were Ford, you could own Opel in Germany, which, by the way, we bombed Opel, and then we paid Ford for reparations while they were still making tanks for goddamn Nazis. Another story. So I'm not bitter. But if you were Ford and owned Opel, yeah, you could own Opel, and that's cool. But they're coming into this country as an import car. You couldn't sell it as a domestic vehicle, okay? So
no, of course. I mean, that's the whole neoliberal free trade bullshit.
Right,
and that enabled all of that. You know?
And everyone from Kennedy, under Kennedy, it was a 5% quota from the Department of Labor that you could have foreign manufacturing. 5% of American manufacturing could be done overseas under Kennedy. And every president of both parties raised that up until Clinton, and then he drove the car through a plate glass window out of an apartment in New York City, and crashed because it was already at about 75% when Clinton came in. And then NAFTA just destroyed it. We had a 30% union participation in this country in the 60s. Now it's about 6%. And that's largely teachers, cops, and fire. And even then, most states are right to work. So unions are basically glorified associations who don't get any raises at all. I work with a sheriff's department out here in my day job, and I know for a fact they haven't had a raise in 14 years. No cost of living, no nothing. And it's Texas. They should love their cops in Texas. Fuck that. You don't get a raise, bitch. That's how that goes in a right-to-work state. Collective bargaining, on the other hand.
Yeah, man, of course, yeah.
And we have 9 counties in Texas out of 254 counties that have collective bargaining, and those motherfuckers behave like a California union or a New York union. And so when you look at what I'm looking, this is what I require from a President Sanders, okay? And this is what I'm afraid of getting. Just a shrug of the shoulders. I tried to get Medicare for all, and the Congress wouldn't let me do it. What he needs to do is what Teddy Roosevelt did and what Franklin Roosevelt did. Ironically, they were cousins. They went on the radio. In Teddy's case, he went into the newspapers and said, I can't work with a bot Congress. You're going to have to write your congressman so that I can get shit done. I want parks.
No, more than right. I mean, in other words, that's exactly what I was referring to. But let's be realistic, okay? I am not holding my breath, okay, that Sanders has that in him, okay? So this is what confused a lot of people, because they, it's like, Adrian, I feel very cohesive. I don't feel I'm being convoluted at all. I'm very clear about what I'm saying. In other words, so my position is very clear. I am supporting the American working class in their choice, because I agree with them that there is no other choice at this particular historical moment for them to put whatever, insignificant power their vote may have. Okay, if they're going to use it somehow, Bernie is the way to go. Having said that, this needs to be a huge sort of rallying call for the real American left, for all of those that think of themselves as activists, for all of those who think of themselves as revolutionaries, all of those who believe that, that the system is rigged, that as long as we keep on working within the duopoly, nothing's going to happen. This is the opportunity, I believe, historically, one of the best opportunities that have presented itself. Because if I had gone to the rally yesterday, if I had gone to the Bernie Sanders rally yesterday and used the opportunity, because, I was part of a movement, because I was part of a political party, used the opportunity to talk to those people about the importance of moving further left, I can guarantee you that at least 50% of them, if not more, would have been receptive, to engaging me directly in a discussion about the importance of building a sustainable movement for change in this country. Mm-hmm. I can guarantee you that. And in my experience, Abe, other than when the leftists call for rallies, when we ourselves organize rallies, here in Austin, when I call for a rally to oppose the war in Syria, when I call for a rally against intervention in Venezuela, which I have, the people who show up are like the people that I hang out with. It's like the same 20 or 25 people all the time. We don't have to convince each other of anything. And even then we have disagreements, which shows the state of affairs that, we in the left are in. Now, I think I want your listeners to walk away with the idea is that there are no illusions. You should have no illusions about a Bernie Sanders presidency. Do not shame the working class because they are opting to vote for what is ultimately the only real viable option that would make, at least try to make a little bit of a difference within the limitations that we know, he carries, as a national social democrat at the service of empire. We know all that. And then stop shaming and start organizing.
Right.
And let's start trying to take this opportunity that these people are awakening, take the rhetoric, assume as a fact that Bernie's rhetoric is false, that he's a puppet. Call him the sheepdog. Call him whatever it is. It doesn't matter to you as an organizer. It does not matter to you. What matters to you is that there are at least like 40 or 50 million people in this country that are like responding positively to these things. And I challenge anybody listening to us to tell me when was the last time they experienced. No, Obama never spoke about this shit. Clinton never spoke about this shit. Kennedy didn't speak about these things. Not even really Roosevelt spoke about some of this shit. Okay, so basically, this is a historical moment. I have, and I'm excited just about that. And I want people to think about what can we do with that? Deconstruction comes easy, man. Construction is the labor of the revolutionary. Construction means, where do we go from here? How many meetings of radicals are happening around the country to figure out what we do now? None. They're all in fucking Facebook, like calling me a fucking traitor because I dare to fucking say that I support the people because I don't see an option.
Right.
You cannot have a party, man, okay, which shows up like the Green Party does every fucking 4 years on an election time, not having done any work. Because tell me, where is the Green Party? Where is the Green Party? Except for like Jill Stein, like embracing every possible media scandal that she can get her hands on so she can not lose her celebrity light. Where? So you cannot you have to earn the people's trust, man. You have to organize the people. You have to be amongst the people. You have to be of the people. You have to use your resources. You need a long-term plan. You don't run a fucking candidate. You come up with like an 8-year to 10-year plan in which you will devote every ounce of your resources to organizing people on the streets. And then, you may be able to like mobilize 15, 20 million people, into the ballot box. But no, man, it's like, and that's too much, you see. That's too much. Because there are, what's more important is to attack your comrades, right? What's more important is to go after the throat of the people with whom you're trying to build a party and make sure that they don't get the power that you want for yourself. Because like you said, people are petty. And people talk about revolution as if it's something you can learn in books, man. But revolution is an internal process by which you arrive through a lot of self-criticism and a lot of ego surrendering and a lot of real love and respect for the people that are around you, and not about you and your power and your advancement and your demagoguery. No, man, it's about really having the convictions to do the work that needs to be done and make it about the people. And a lot of us are not there. I'm working on it, man. I'm trying.
Working on it. Listen, man, I came up religious. I got out about 30 years ago. I got early release for time served. But the one thing I remember was when Pontius Pilate took Jesus and Barabbas, who was, quote unquote, a cop killer, if you really think about it. And he took him on the balcony and he said, hey, man, here's this guy. He fed 5,000 people with some fish and bread. And he raised some guys from the dead without coverage. How cool. You want Jesus or you want Barabbas? And they said, give us Barabbas. That's the fucking human nature of it, man. But what you just said is heavy. I'm not going to say any more on that. We got to wrap up. We're out of time. But brother, I swear to God, I never a dull moment with you, my friend. This is why. This is why I love you. Friend of the show. The way we met was I couldn't have written this in fiction. It was just right out of fairy tales. But listen, man, I got to get going. You got to get going. But folks, listen. Right. My guest has been Adrian Boutureira, and as always, a lot of insight. Hope you got something out of this. Again, patreon.com/The Bitter Truth. Also find us on TexasFreePress.com. And if this shit makes you uncomfortable, it's supposed to, sleep tight.